Welcome to Division Street, a mini-series on Your TV that seeks to help us understand why our city is facing certain challenges like unaffordable housing, food insecurity, and the drug poisoning crisis, and what people are doing about it. I'm Saya the Jaffer, co-host of Division Street with Jamie Swift. Today we welcome Sue Deuchars. Sue lost her son, who was in his mid-20s, to drug poisoning in 2016. Before and since then, she has dedicated her time and energy to supporting and advocating for people who use substances. Sue works at the Integrated Care Hub. Thanks so much for joining us today, Sue. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to the work that you're doing?
My son was around 13. Before that, he struggled with anxiety and some childhood trauma, that sort of thing. And when he turned around 13, he started using weed. And then things got a little bit more serious. I hit the ground running. I didn't know anything about substances because that wasn't my MO when I was dealing with my childhood trauma. So I literally did hit the ground running and just tried to learn as much as I possibly could. Devin and I were very, very close, as am I with my other kids. We had really open communication, so I think it was easier for him to come to me and easier for me to talk to him. Because apart from substances, I didn't really know how to parent either, really. Because of my own background, I kind of set the tone with the kids when they were young and said, hey, we're all in this together. I'm going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes, but it's important that we earn each other's respect and be open with each other and compassionate, and on we go. As he got older and went to high school, of course, kids have a little bit more freedom, and there are things that are more available to them. And so he learned pretty quickly that he could buy substances and whatnot. He had a job, so I didn't really know about it, and at the time I didn't really know what to look for besides what the effects of smoking weed or whatever. I could tell that he was struggling, but I really, I didn't know how to handle it. So he had a really good group of friends. They were all sort of fringe dwellers too. They were sort of the misfits of, I guess you could say, society. They really didn't have much interest in being a part of the greater, community. They had their own ideas and their own, belief system. And so I think the first thing that I did was, get to know them as Devin's friends, and I worked really hard to earn their respect, and they became very comfortable with me. So when Devin looked like he was beginning to struggle even more, they felt comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, this is what's going on, thought you should know.
What happened next to Devin?
Devin, so around the age of 17, I think, he developed 3 bulging discs in his back, which were extremely painful, and he was also working at the time as well. He had moved out by then with his friends, and we had tried all sorts of different things like TENS machines and acupuncture and all sorts of things, and it just was not working. So that was sort of an added thing next to his trauma and mental health issues. So I don't know, but I think probably he was introduced to, you know, I think it was hydromorphine, and so he started taking it. He started taking it by mouth, and he realized that it was really helping the pain in his spine, but also it was helping his mood, you know. He felt it a lot easier to continue and to, you know, get up every day using the hydromorphine. And at the time, he was using other substances as well. So when he first started in on hydromorphine or heroin, I can't be sure actually what it was, but he was going at it hard and heavy, and I think that was partly more to do with his mental health and the trauma. So there was a period of time when it was a little out of control. He wasn't at the point where he could figure out, you know, what would get him well, what would, you know, get him really high and whatnot. So that was difficult. But I saw him every day. We would have lunch, and then it just sort of grew from there. He got on methadone. He hooked up with street health and other various supports. He was put on methadone, which went fairly well. He didn't really like how it was controlled. It was hard to taper down. But he, you know, he continued to use substances as well. But he did get to a point where he was just using to stay well, so that he wouldn't have withdrawal symptoms, but also just so that he could stay steady, because it did help his mental health. And then this is sort of a side note, around 2015, and I wasn't aware of it at the time, but in BC they started to have issues with fentanyl poisoning, illicit fentanyl being made and brought into the city and making its way into the illicit drug supply. But it hadn't really hit, you know, Ontario. It was mostly concentrated in BC. But then, of course, it, you know, filters through and sort of spread. So I think Justine said it was around 2015 that we started seeing that, but not a whole lot. Sort of mid-2015, I think. And Devin, I'm sure, wasn't aware of it. So he would use fentanyl patches, so people would sell their fentanyl patch scripts. And the only other time that he would overdose, which I think he overdosed twice, was by scraping the gel substance off the fentanyl patches, and you can't dose properly. He had never overdosed prior to that. But then, of course, later on in 2016, he unfortunately picked up some substances that he thought were, you know, either heroin or I'm assuming more hydromorphine, or that he would crush up and use, probably heroin actually, because it would be powdered. But so he dosed the way he normally would to get well and to be able to function. And he died. Yeah, he died, and after we found that it was fentanyl. Actually, I didn't realize it was fentanyl up until I called the police station not too long ago, actually, about a 6 months ago, and they told me, because I'd never gotten the coroner's report or anything, and they said that it was fentanyl. Up until then, I thought that he had died by suicide, that he had, just because he was under a lot of pressure then, he just felt the need that, he was 24 and he needed to do something with his life, and he was trying to, apply to schools, and he was trying to get onto Silvaldi, which is a Hep C treatment, and before he could do that, he had to detox, so there was a lot of pressure, so yeah, for some reason I thought that he might have tried to die by suicide, but it was fentanyl poisoning, and
a substance that we knew so little about at that time, right?
Yeah. So, he was trying to get his life together. Prior to that, he had been through a program, overdose or relapse prevention program, which unfortunately took a long time for him to get into, because of course there's not a heck of a lot of funding for mental health and addictions. So it took him probably a good 6 months or so to get into that program. He received his certificate March 31st, and he died August 2nd of 2016. So when he died, I just sort of hit the ground running, and I started reading all sorts of things. I'd heard about Gabor Mate. I connected with Justine McIsaac at Street Health, because Devin had seen her, and she gave me a ton of opportunities, and one of the first ones was my wanting to have a first overdose, International Overdose Awareness Day, which I thought was really important. I thought that it would bring, a little bit more, what's the word?
Visibility?
Yeah, towards substance use disorder, and perhaps a better understanding too. So there was a press conference there, so she asked me to be involved with that, and the getting the Overdose Awareness Day together was definitely a collaborative effort, and it sort of snowballed into my meeting with mutual aid groups, and then my wanting there to be naloxone in as many places as possible, particularly the citywide institutions. So I came to you. I came to the AKA Center and talked to a few people, and they said, "Okay, let's do this. How can we help?" And so we made T-shirts, and we put stuff together, and we got support from Street Health and people working there, and some of the wider community, and we went to City Hall, and I spoke to the importance of having naloxone in all the city institutions, and it was a bit of a tough sell, but eventually it happened. So
congratulations.
Thanks. Well, it was a group effort. I just wanted more and more and more to be able to work with people, and Devin, in the end, Devin gave me that opportunity because he was my greatest teacher, and so were his friends. If I hadn't taken that route, if I had kicked Devin out and kicked him to the curb, and I don't think that I would have learned as much. I had the compassion and the empathy, but I didn't have the knowledge that I needed, and so I'm forever grateful to Devin's friends and Devin for being so open with me, and that's why I'm here, and I love it. I love it. I love every minute of it.
Well, Kingston's lucky to have you as someone who's such a strong advocate, from the work you've done at City Hall to the work you're doing at the Integrated Care Hub. It it sounds like you're very busy.
Yeah.
One of the things we've been hearing a little bit more about in Kingston has been the idea of decriminalizing substances.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about your thoughts on that idea.
I think it's really, really important. Decriminalization will, you know, if you look at the Portugal model, I'm not going to go through it, but it can, you know, it's well documented. But decriminalization to me is taking the funding away from criminalizing people, to putting them through the justice system, to putting them in jail, and taking all that funding, and also, you know, taking some of the funding away from, you know, police, and putting it towards mental health and housing and you know, opportunities for people to get jobs and the help they need in order to sort of, you know, move forward. And that's huge. To me, it's just, it's a very, very important part of the stigma, because when you decriminalize, part of it is that, you know, you're this awful person because you do drugs, or you take drugs, and it just simply isn't so. It's you know, it's not. It's a health matter. It's a mental health matter. It's a housing matter. It's a capitalist matter. It's you know, if we don't have community and connection, if we don't have a house or a roof over our head, if we don't have community and support and love and compassion and unconditional, you know, love, and no judgment, then how can anybody move forward? I mean, we all have addictions in one way or another. It's what we're groomed for in this society, because society places importance on status and material goods and you know, money and productivity, and that just simply isn't, we can't, it's not sustainable. So it's really, really important. And to go along with decrim, I think safe supply is really, really important, because people can't...
Can you explain what safe or safer supply is?
Safe supply, to me, I mean, there are different ways you can do it, but really, basically, it's providing safe substances. So it can be done through, you know, prescriptions through a doctor's office. It's a way that people can get clean substances that are not poisoned by fentanyl or carfentanil or any other substance. They can go get their opiates, whether it's Dilaudid or, you know, it should be all sorts of different things, fentanyl especially, because that's what people have gotten used to using. And they, you know, they don't have to look for it. They don't have to fear that they're going to die on any given day because they're not sure of what's in their supply. And, you know, fentanyl, illicit fentanyl, can be made very easily. It's not, with a safe supply, you know exactly what dose you're getting. You don't know that with illicit fentanyl.
So it sounds like it would help reduce the number of drug poisoning deaths.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Because I think when Devon died, there were, in the KFL and A region, there were precious few deaths at that point, but it snowballed into, you know, I think I only know the Canadian statistics, but throughout Canada since January of, or March of 2016 to January of 21, I think it is, because we're always a year behind, there were well over 30,000 deaths, which is
astounding.
It's astounding, and it's to me, it's all because of failed drug policy. I mean, what's it going to take? You know, when the SARS epidemic was epidemic was out there, 44 people died, and the government hit the ground running. They did all they could. They pronounced a health crisis, and because of stigma, it's been very slow going. And to me, safe supply really is the only way to go, especially now, because dead people can't recover. I mean, that sounds really harsh, but dead people can't recover. They can't get housing. How else are we going to deal with this? It's the only way.
So along those lines, I wonder if you have advice on a couple fronts. One, for people who see their children or loved ones using substances, what advice might you give them?
Try, develop a really open relationship with your kids. Get to know where their heads are at, what's important to them. Because I think the mistake that we make as parents is that we think we know our kids really, really well. We think we know what traumas they've had, what difficulty they've had in their life, and it simply isn't true, because, or a lot of the time it isn't true, because we're looking at life from a certain perspective. For instance, if there are two parents in the family, they both have jobs, they have a roof over their head, the kids have lots and lots of opportunities. To somebody that might look like, well, so they don't really have any trauma, or they haven't experienced any trauma. But unfortunately, people can we don't know our kids. We don't have a crystal ball. So I think it's really important to get to know your kids. If you find out that your kids are using substances, then try to talk to peers. Heck, go down to the ICH or Street Health and make an appointment. And really work hard to become educated. Go on YouTube. There's this great thing, the internet. Gabor Mate is an amazing source of education. He's amazing. So if you go on YouTube and Google him, and look him up. There's all sorts of talks. Unconditional love and compassion. It's the most important thing.
Thanks, Sue. And I wonder, on the lines of advice, do you have any advice for our community about how it can be a more welcoming and inclusive place for people who use substances? What might help us address stigma and discrimination?
Just be open to being educated. Be open to understanding that perhaps you've got it wrong. Perhaps there's a lot of misinformation out there, and perhaps learn about trauma, early childhood trauma. Just talk to people. When people are downtown and they're sitting, hoping to find some money or some food or change, don't cross the street. Acknowledge them and say hi and ask them if there's anything that you can do for them, or if you don't have money, ask them if they want a coffee, and could you maybe sit down and talk to them, and you'll find out that they're human beings, and they're struggling, and they need community. It's really important. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sue, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for watching. See you on the next episode of Division Street.